Hello, everybody. We welcome you to another edition of Snap the Pigskin. Noah Clark, Kedrick Stumbris. Hopefully you can hear us because we're only using one mic. We have a little bit of a elaborate setup today in Kedrick's parents' basement, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good setup. I got to give credit. This is
It is. We fortunately have my dad's collection of all 32 NFL mini helmets as the backdrop. Only the NFC helmets behind us there. Yeah. I guess he ran out of Packers mini helmets to get signed, though.
He has like a bunch over there.
Yeah, but so then the one above us here is this breast cancer awareness pink helmet.
Oh, I see that. The little pink one.
Yeah, so the Packers helmet up there is either a little bit out of place, or if you're a fan of another NFC North team, you think it actually probably looks perfect. But yeah, this is great. We've lived up to the reputation of podcasters in our parents' basements.
Yes. All right. Loving it.
We've made it.
Loving it. Well, so while I'm here, I came up to Appleton for the week because we're in Appleton, Wisconsin. We'll start out with this to begin. We were at Packers camp, and just a quick insight of what the Packers were doing. Obviously, we'll talk about it later on. Jordan Love got paid. He got an extension. He did really well in at least some of the drills that we saw today. They had a team drill today. He did a lot better than what we saw the day before. But any thoughts on Packers camp, Kedrick? Because there was a lot to take away from what we saw at Green Bay.
Yeah, a couple of days up at training camp with Noah has been a good time, and I think we learned a lot about what Green Bay's roster is already shaking out to be. It's interesting because this time last year, I think we were talking about some real battles for trying to find out what players were going to make the 53. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have that as much this year anymore. Maybe there's a little bit of question at who gets that long snapper spot. But given that they re-signed Peter Bowden earlier this week, it seems that they're probably actually set at who the long snapper is already going to be. Not going to be Peter Bowden, although I'd love for him to actually take that spot.
For the Badger too, by the way.
Exactly. But you got to see some positional battles shaping out. Lots of these young safeties rotating in with Xavier McKinney. Tells you the Packers are just leaving no stone unturned. Kind of like what we saw in the draft, right? Mm-hmm. Just no stone unturned. We're going to draft all the defensive backs. Doing that, Jordan Morgan, their first round pick, I think it's pretty clear he's going to slot in and start at right guard for the Packers come week 1. So it has been illuminating very quickly just seeing how this team is evolving on the depth chart, bringing in some of its young pieces. The roster is evolving from a season ago. And it's all things go for a team that is all of a sudden we had one season where it was not the case in Green Bay, and it's once again Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of the offensive line. We saw a lot. We saw a lot of the offensive line,
which was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool seeing the offensive line up close and impersonal. And Jordan Morgan, I think definitely you're right. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a starting guard. I mean, they drafted him when they drafted him to be a tackle, but he primarily, I think, will play the guard position. And Sean Ryan and who else? Royce Freeman still somehow is on the team. Royce Newman still somehow on the team. Those aren't two. I mean, Sean Ryan did play well, but those aren't your two guard options that you would want to go into at the beginning of the season. And
and when you're
fits,
that's the thing is when your other. It's strange because Jordan Morgan, I mean, his best position in college was playing at left tackle. He's gotten the build more to play guard at the NFL level, but for Jordan Morgan, seemingly poised to start at right guard, so kicking inside on the opposite side from where he played all those snaps in college, I think tells you a little bit about Jordan Morgan's versatility, but I think tells you a lot more about how the Packers feel about their other options at right guard.
Yeah.
Because it would not be, I think, on anyone's wish list to take a first round draft pick kick them to the opposite side and inside to take their first snaps in an NFL game
at guard, which is kind of, and also too, Zach Tom not being in there also doesn't help. And they've had,
you're seeing a lot of that right tackle
get
eaten up by Rashawn Gary right now.
And it's not fun just watching Rashawn Gary just pancake over people. The defense, however, they've done really well. We really got a good glimpse of the defense, and they played phenomenally well. The safety core, it was you that told me this, you could look at the safety core from last year and look at the safety core from this year and be like, this is a completely different.
What happened?
Yeah, this is a completely
terrible
big
accident.
jump from the safety core this year. They only had one safety return to the roster, and that was, I believe, Anthony Johnson.
Yep.
And they lost Darnell Savage. They lost, Jonathan Owens also was a safety for that group. They lost Rudy Ford, who was a safety for that group. And they come back. They get Evan Williams. They get Xavier McKinney. They had Ketan Oladapo. They got Javon Bullard. That's 4 safeties right there that are now coming in to replace them. And from
basically all those young guys getting reps in some form or another with the first team defense,
which is really nice to see because you need all those reps that you can get.
Yep.
And what was interesting about the Hafley defense is Hafley put in Evan Williams and Javon Bullard at the same time. But Javon Bullard, like we talked about, you said this to me.
Yes.
He played a little bit more slot at the University of Georgia.
Yes.
And even though he primarily plays, his position is a safety, primarily his spot is a slot corner. So they tested him out there at the corner spot. And I thought that was very interesting how that worked out, especially because too, Carrington Valentine didn't practice today. So they had a little bit of a, let's try and mix things up a bit with our secondary. And it worked really well because I thought Bullard played it well at some points.
Yeah. Bullard played, I'm going back to my, my notes after the draft and pre-draft notes. Javon Bullard played primarily as in the slot in college at Georgia. So that'll, I am assuming that is the plan. Like, why not have that be the plan? He's great at that. Have him keep doing it. But so that we don't just eat up the entire show with Packers talk.
Yes,
I will transition a little bit and just say, this is the first year that I've actually gotten to go to any NFL training camp in person. One, maybe this time next year we should go to a couple. Maybe do an NFC North tour. You and I take a little road trip around the NFC North or something like that and try to see a few teams in person. Because if you are a fan of an NFL team and you haven't been to your team's training camp before, I recommend it. Yeah, it's 2 days where you really get to see how things are shaking out and just watching players and coaches interact with each other. It tells you a lot about how the positions and the battles there to make the roster or to make a climb up the depth chart. Although you can read about it on the internet from great sources, of course. And you should do that if we're writing them or talking about them on this podcast. But also doing that primarily in person, getting that what's the word I'm looking for? Like first person sort of primary sourcing, so to speak, is I think really helpful to better understand your own team. It's important. But
it is.
I mean, I guess look at me honking for in-person journalism, but like whatever. Take my word for it, I guess.
I mean, the other thing is too is you get more of a sense of connection with that team as well. That's I think the one thing too. Like especially in Green Bay, like Green Bay has a big connection. The fans are connected to the team all the way from training camp to the end of the regular season and in the postseason. So
yeah, and if you're a Wisconsin Badgers fan, there's going to be a camp day open to fans coming up here when the football team comes back to Madison from Platteville. So you can send that too. Or is that in Platteville? That might be in Platteville. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, let's talk about more stuff going on.
So another thing that's going on, we actually, for the first time in a very, very long time, I want to jump into this really quickly. The Bears play this week. They play Thursday.
We have NFL football.
We have NFL
kind of
football
back.
on Thursday. I'm very excited about this. Not really. It's preseason. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if
now the preseason doesn't matter.
Preseason doesn't matter because
all last year
it did matter. This year now, after hearing it from Sam Jamidi, it doesn't matter as much. Bears play the Texans. One bright thing to look about: no Caleb Williams. Hard Knocks starts next week. That's going to be fun. It's featuring the Chicago Bears. I'm very excited about that. So that's going to be something that will be fun to watch and hopefully see. I mean, the Texans get to introduce their new jerseys too. They got new uniforms. So that'll be a good look.
Are you going to watch a single second of the Hall of Fame game?
Probably maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes of it I'll watch, and then I'm probably going to be done. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
Now, we'll get on to the even bigger news. Franchise quarterbacks. Couple franchise quarterbacks locked up deals literally the same day.
Which 2 hours apart.
Which is pretty nice. Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa both got deals. Both got theirs done the exact same day. Jordan Love's deal, very, very, very nice for the Packers. And Tua's also got a big deal as well. You look at it, though, the AAV versus the salary cap, and this is what we got in our Google Doc that you put in, Kedrick. These two are going to be making a lot of money, especially Jordan Love. What was it? We looked at it. It was $75 million. He gets
$75 million guaranteed at signing, the largest signing bonus in NFL history.
I couldn't find that on there. There it is. So yeah, $55 million average AAV. Tied with Burrow and Lawrence. $75 million signing bonus, largest in NFL history. And along with that, Tua is also up there as well. He got paid the bag, and Jordan Love, man, this is going to be something with these two. It does pose the question of what happens next with Dak Prescott because of where the quarterback market is. But let's start with those two quarterbacks because these two got their deals respectively done, and they got them done. And now Miami and Green Bay both have their franchise quarterbacks locked up for the next few years.
Yeah, I thought, going back to the very beginning, I thought the messaging that Athletes First decided to do of putting these deals together just a few hours apart and having that go out a few hours apart is just curious sequencing because it kind of made Tua's deal a little bit of an afterthought because it quickly got overshadowed by Jordan Love's deal. But Tua getting $53.1 million in average annual value, that is just above the $53 million that Jared Goff got. So that's that number for that caliber of quarterback right now. I think when you look at the structure of Tua's deal, I think the biggest sticking points there were trying to account for injuries. As Noah closed the note that I had about this on that I wanted to say here, he's throwing stuff all over the place on me, was injuries based on the way the rolling guarantees works for Tua's deal. He has a 2026 roster bonus that becomes guaranteed in 2025. Jordan Love had that same kind of guarantee as in his contract as well. But Tua's guarantee there, that's guaranteed regardless of him getting injured. So even if he were to get injured this season, that 2026 roster bonus is still fully guaranteed for him. I think it's also pretty clear based on the structure of the contract that the Dolphins are a little bit worried about committing to Tua long term. We haven't seen, what he can do without, hyper crazy athletes around him. And he has, struggled when he has not had those players at his disposal. And so a 4-year deal for both of these quarterbacks tells you that Athletes First wants, and the only reason I go back to the agents, who I think are usually non-factors in these stories, right? But because we have, these very similar quarterback contracts negotiated by the same firm, it gives you some, I think, really important insight to how at least this certain agency is thinking about its quarterbacks and what they want in contracts in the future. Because if Athletes First goes back to the table for a quarterback soon, and I don't know who else they have on their roster, I think it's going to be another 4-year deal. They want these quarterbacks to bet on themselves for the long term, so that they can go back before quarterbacks turn 30 and get that second deal. Because once you hit that 30-year mark, most of the time quarterback play is going to fall off quite significantly very quickly. But in the case for this deal, the dead cap money, the dead cap hit, if the Dolphins were to part ways with Tua, drops significantly after 2026. They have a huge out for both sides there, so that they can both go back to the table after 2026 and make this work for them. So Tua, this story is not done. I think we're going to be back here in 2 years, 3 tops for Tua, even though it's a 4-year deal.
And this is this is an interesting situation for the Dolphins, because Tua hasn't been healthy before coming into this season, or last season. Before coming into last season, he was not healthy for most of his career, and that had been an issue at Alabama. The injury concerns. He had hip surgery at the end of his career, towards the end of his career at Alabama. There's those issues, and it comes with a big issue for the Dolphins is they now have him locked up for 2 years. If he has an injury for 2 years, if he has an injury during that span in 2 years, this contract looks terrible for the Dolphins. At least, I mean, it doesn't look
really. I mean, that's the whole the structure of the contract is set up so that it's a win-win for both sides. Tua has some money guaranteed for 2026, regardless of if he gets injured tomorrow, which is good. But also after 2026, they can cut bait. It works for both sides.
But do you want to, that's the thing though, do you want to have that 2-year commitment, knowing that if Tua does have a season-ending injury, do you want to have to go through that? Because it could change a lot of their timeline.
I don't think any franchise wants their franchise.
It could change their timeline
alternatively.
Injury. Because when Mike McDaniel is doing a great job, but if Tua gets hurt, where does this leave Mike McDaniel on the table? I mean, that's all I'm saying, is just because
you could say that about Patrick Mahomes. I could say it about anybody. If any quarterback were to tear their ACL,
so I mean, it is concerning with Tua. Now, on the other side of it, for Jordan Love, this is a great situation that he's coming into.
As well. Jordan Love gets that $55 million is in average annual value, tying him as the highest paid player in league history with Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. The structure here is the sticking point for the contract. The Packers normally don't guarantee money outside of that initial signing bonus. And in this case, you got, like I mentioned before, some of these other rolling guarantees that are in Tua's deal. So that's why also I go back to the agency is kind of part of the story here, because this is the same little bit of structure that we had in the Tua deal that goes back to Jordan Love's deal, and that goes against the typical structure that Green Bay gives in its quarterback contracts. So I do think the agency is a bit of a story here. He gets some of this roster and option bonuses. That helps Jordan Love be, locked in, more secure in his standing with Green Bay for the future. The Packers can't as easily cut bait with him. Clearly, length of the deal was also the push-pull of the contract. It's talking about the 4 years so that Jordan Love can get back to the negotiating table before he turns 30, try to cash in again. Packers can't cut bait with him right away. There are 2 void years on the end of this deal too, right? So the Packers are really encouraged to go back to the table and negotiate with Jordan Love all over again. It's going to make it harder to get rid of Love, but kind of the same push-pull we had with the Tua deal, where the Dolphins can easily cut bait with Tua after 2026. We have a similar thing on the table in this contract with Jordan Love. Packers also have an out after 2026 where you can outright cut Jordan Love, not post June 1 him so that you can you can spread that out over 2 years, but you can outright cut Jordan Love for a $51 million dead cap hit. And that sounds like a lot, considering it's a $55 million average annual value. But put that into context of the Packers just had over $40 million in dead cap last year with Aaron Rodgers. Now extend that number out and how much the salary cap is going to increase in the next 2, 3, 4 seasons.
Massively.
It's that's kind of the same cap hit that you would have if you had to cut bait from Jordan Love a few years from now. It's a deal that makes sense for both sides. It's painful, but it's possible. And, they were 15 minutes away from the NFC title game a year ago, despite a $40 million dead cap hit from a quarterback who was sidelined with an Achilles injury out in the AFC East. So it's a deal that I think makes sense for both sides. And again, the structure tells you all about what the sticking points here were for both sides.
And you talk about it too, like this works well. Like it works perfectly in the Packers' favor. They finally have kind of got out of the dead cap situation with Aaron Rodgers, with Bakhtiari, and now you start to see what this team can finally do. They went into free agency this year with a lot more money on the table. They get Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs to bring in. They pay him a lot of money. And then you go and you re-sign Kenny Clark, and now you pay Jordan Love that extension. They're in a good spot. And even too, like down the road, the Packers are very good with money. They're very good at maneuvering money around, trying to pay, people in-house or even people outside in free agency. And this is another situation where, like, down the road, like you said, with the cap going up, this deal looks really good on paper in a few years.
Yeah. And it's the same thing where the Packers have that cap space, have that flexibility to pay players, and still will with this Jordan Love deal. To go back to how this deal encourages them to go back to the negotiating table. Jordan Love's cap hit remains relatively low for the first few years here, but balloons to over $70 million in 2028. I will guarantee today, July 31st, 2024, Jordan Love will not play on that cap number in 2028. There's no chance. Either he will not be playing for the Green Bay Packers in the NFL because they will cut him after 2026 or 2027, or he will have a renegotiated extended deal, and the Packers have done it again. Those are the two options. He's not going to play on that $70 million cap hit number in 2028. And when you talk about a few years from now, that deal is going to look really good. I think it's important to put these numbers into context with the other quarterback deals going on, right? Yeah, he's the highest paid player in NFL history by just dollars and cents. But when you break down what is that $55 million over the salary cap today, that is 21.5% of the current salary cap. When you break down quarterbacks and the money that they got in average annual value as a percentage of the salary cap when they signed, that ranks 10th. Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love ranked 10th for that taking that percentage of the salary cap. Joe Burrow still has that number far and away when he signed that $55 million average annual value deal. That's 24.4%. So to bring it back to the conversation at the beginning about Dak Prescott, Dak got 21.9% of the cap when he signed his last deal. That puts him in line for a $55.9 million deal. With the way he has the Cowboys over the barrel, I think he's going to get an outsized deal that is going to outpace his current percentage of the cap.
Yeah, and it's a great segue into what my next question is going to be is where does this go for Dak? Because Dak Prescott right now, after seeing these two deals, I mean, he's got to feel pretty happy about what the situation is going to be for him. Mm-hmm. But it's also like, too, Cowboys are in a rough spot. They're kind of just betting on everybody to pan out for them. CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, even Dak Prescott. They're trying to see, if those three will all play well this year, and then they can be, and then Jerry Jones is able to pay the bag. Unfortunately, though, the disappointing part about that is they don't have a lot of cap space to try and maneuver their way to where they can keep all three. And we had this conversation last week in last week's episode. They're going to probably have to get rid of two of the three just to pay one.
Yep.
And it's most likely going to be Dak. So I'm curious, for Dak, what the heck is going to happen with him? Because there was rumors that CeeDee Lamb, they got a deal done. There hasn't been any other rumors yet that that deal is true. Micah Parsons, he's on the last year of his contract, I believe, in his rookie deal. They did pick up his fifth-year option. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of question marks for what the Cowboys are going to do. But I think ideally it's going to be them trying to lock up Dak and trying to get him to be their quarterback for the next few years.
Yeah, I think that's the more it looks like talks are advancing with CeeDee Lamb, the more I'm convinced I think Micah Parsons is going to get franchise tagged. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening to him. I'm not totally sure. I don't know if the Cowboys have, because I talked about on my show on Sconnie Six Pack back when the Trevor Lawrence deal got done, talking about what Jordan Love's contract might look like. The Packers, for example, have never had a player play under the franchise tag ever for them. I don't know what that looks like for the Cowboys, what their history with the tag necessarily is. So I'd be interested to figure that out before I speculate more on what will happen with Mike Parsons there. But I think you got to get a deal done with Dak because you don't have better options. I think he's pretty clearly a top 10 quarterback. Played like an MVP last season. Maybe should have been the MVP last season, as I've said on the show before. And his deal, I think, is going to come in somewhere around that $60 million mark. And they will have to get creative with spreading that out over years. You give him a big signing bonus. I wonder if Jordan Love's record signing bonus will be broken with that Dak Prescott deal then, because if you give them that signing bonus, you can prorate it over the life of the contract, gives you some more flexibility. Maybe you build in some void years on the end of that deal too. If Dak Prescott gets to 60 million, that will be by nature of him getting somewhere in the line of 23% of the current salary cap, which puts him in line with around Lamar Jackson for what he got paid as a percentage of the cap. So I think it's a deal that makes sense when you're thinking about that in tiers of quarterbacks. And yeah, it's going to be hard for the Cowboys. They're not going to be able to keep everybody. I don't think. But given where these quarterback deals have come in a little bit cheaper than I would have expected them to, I think that maybe helps the Cowboys a little bit in their quest to keep everyone there.
And that's the other thing is, at least if you get the franchise tag on Parsons, it at least gives you another year to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
For how you're going to pay Micah Parsons. Because if you pay Lamb and you pay Dak, you would almost have to think, you got a franchise tag Micah Parsons. He's got one more year left on his deal. And CeeDee Lamb broke a ton, was elite last year. He was unbelievable last year for the Cowboys. So letting that go in a contract year is going to be very hard for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, the other question about if they go the franchise tag route is, does he get classified as an outside linebacker or a defensive end? Because there's a big money difference on the tag for those two positions.
Because and it's true. I mean, like linebacker, I think it's either linebacker is a little bit more, or edge rusher is a little bit less.
The linebacker tag is almost $3 million.
So so if you were to get tagged, it's kind of that consideration of, well, where do you consider yourself? Which position are you more of, a linebacker or an edge rusher? Because if he's a linebacker, that franchise tag is a little bit more pricier. But if he's classified as an edge rusher, then it's a little bit cheaper, and it could be something that they could maneuver around enough.
Yep.
But we'll see what they do. But congrats to Dak and congrats to Tua. They got their deals done.
Jordan Love got his deal done.
Sorry, not Dak. I'm confused because we talked Dak for a long time. We talked a lot about Dak last week on our show. But congrats to J-Lo and Tua. They both are now franchise quarterbacks for the next few years, and hopefully one of them will get to the playoffs, maybe win a Super Bowl here.
You're a big Tua guy, huh?
No. I'm just trying to give these guys – I'm trying to give Dolphins fans hope for Tua. I am not a big fan of Tua. For multiple reasons. One, he's never stayed healthy his entire NFL career until last year. And two, he's left-handed. So take that with a grain of salt. Training camp is going on. All 32 teams reported training camp last week. And all 32 teams have begun training camp. We are in the second training camp week. Couple of holdouts here for some wide receivers, though. A little bit more to look on it. Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, both getting held out here. Brandon Ayuk, there was a video that surfaced on Twitter earlier that Brandon Ayuk was happily shaking hands with John Lynch. So a potential deal could get done there. with the 49ers. I pray to God that it doesn't happen as a Packers fan. I hope that he's just gone from that team. But along with that, there are other wide receivers out there. Jamar Chase is in a contract year this year. CeeDee Lamb's in a contract year. We talked about that last week. These are two top 5 wide receivers that are desperately looking for the bag. Justin Jefferson got absolutely paid the bag. He's now the highest wide receiver in NFL history. And both of those two are looking to kind of break that record once again. And to do so, they are holding out while also holding in, while also holding out. So let's start with Jamar Chase, because the Bengals have done this historically before. Mike Brown, who's the owner, has been notoriously known. And Bengals fans, if you're listening or watching this program, you could know probably.
Oh, they know.
They probably know. Mike Brown's historically cheap. He didn't pay Carson Palmer when Carson Palmer needed it, wanted to get a deal done. He didn't go out and help the team in free agency and try and generate things when Carson Palmer's here. Same with Andy Dalton. Didn't help provide stuff for Andy Dalton. Didn't really want to give Andy Dalton a contract extension at one point. And so Mike Brown has had a history of not paying guys the money. And here's another situation now where you have this incredible elite receiver in Jamar Chase. The last 2 seasons, he's been, a top 5, top 10 wide receiver. In his first year, got to the Super Bowl with Joe Burrow. Now he's commanding the bag. I think, respectively, he should command the bag for what he's done for his play. And if they were to lose him in free agency, it would be one of the more it would be one of the more backstabbing things or one of the more devastating things to happen in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, he's playing on that 4th year of the rookie deal. They picked up his 5th-year option. That they could potentially tag him twice. So they got, what is that, a total of 4 more seasons of, including this year, 4 seasons upcoming still of team control for Jamar Chase. But I think they want to get a deal done. If they would not have walked away from the T. Higgins table and had him play on the franchise tag if they weren't this upcoming season, if Cincinnati wasn't generally preparing to hand an extension to Jamar Chase. They are very open about doing it, but the way this is taking an extended holdout by Jamar Chase to get it done now is it raising questions? Mm-hmm. I think respectfully it should. I don't know what the holdout here, I don't know what the holdout here is for, not in the sense of Jamar Chase holding out. I don't know what we're waiting for at this point. I don't know what Cincinnati is waiting for at this point because if CeeDee Lamb gets a deal done, are they expecting it to be lower than the Justin Jefferson number so that Jamar can come in and say, okay, great, now I'm going to take less money? Is Cincinnati, if Cincinnati thinks it's going to be the CeeDee Lamb's going to be higher than Justin Jefferson's number, like, get this done now. And Jamar Chase, although, he has the 4th year upcoming, although he has that 5th year option, he's really young. He's a year younger than Justin Jefferson. Mm-hmm. And him getting this deal done as soon as possible to get to that 3rd contract is going to be really, really, really important so that he can sign that 3rd deal, that really lucrative deal at the end of it, so that he can cash in. It is baffling to me that this is not done, considering all that Cincinnati says publicly about how much they want to keep Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow together. Fortunately, Jamar is doing all the right things, it seems, at camp, helping out other wide receivers, being as active a participant in practice you can be without actually being an active participant. So I am very curious to see what the number on this deal is going to be, to see what the number on CeeDee's deal is going to be as CeeDee Lamb also holds out, because we have a new class of top wide receiver contracts in the league, and they were always dramatic to the very finish.
Yeah, and Jamar Chase he's doing everything right, like you said. This should be not too hard, but Mike Brown the Bengals owner, historically known for being cheap and undercutting guys. And not only is he doing it to Jamar Chase, doing it to T. Higgins, putting him on the franchise tag, he's probably not going to be back in Cincinnati next year. And if they were to lose Higgins and Chase, like that is as brutal as you could get for Mike Brown. And a lot of Bengals fans would be very, very mad about that. They would not be happy if they lost two of their cornerstone pieces at wide receiver, because both of them were drafted the same year.
Yeah,
I
think ultimately it gets figured out. The Bengals have said very openly that they are going to get a deal done before the season starts. I don't know why that's not the case already, but
they should have got this done already.
Yeah, it seems that it should be happening. It doesn't. If you are going to pay a number one wide receiver, that Jamar Chase is number 1A, one with the star, whatever you want to do.
He's also got number one on his jersey.
That's true too. Plus pay Joe Burrow the biggest quarterback contract there is. You can't really afford to have that other wide receiver. You can't afford to have that wide receiver play on the franchise tag, because otherwise you have to take that cap hit, that 25, 27, 28, whatever it is when they would tag him. That cap hit all lands at once, all lands in that one season. They can't afford to do that with Jamar Chase. They're going to need to get a deal done. They're going to need to put some of that in a signing bonus so that you can prorate it. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to field the rest of the roster together without this wide receiver deal really hamstringing your team.
Yeah. And there's a cat reference in here. I'm trying to figure out, cat scratching without cat scratching, because it's a Bengal and it's a tiger. No, not that one. I haven't got you with one all day today. All day. I've tried
much of a stretch.
I've tried to hit him with jokes all day today, which is just, it's not been working. But the Cowboys deal with CeeDee Lamb is also, like we talked about this last week with CeeDee. CeeDee definitely deserves the bag. He's along with Jamar Chase, another outstanding wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver. Last year was in the top 5 in receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. He broke Cowboys records in some of those categories as well. And this is an issue with Jerry Jones. He loves Dak Prescott, but also too, it's a passing league. The other thing is too with the Dallas Cowboys, they need to start rebuilding. They're never going to. And it's because Jerry Jones is the owner for that organization. This would be if they were to re-sign CeeDee Lamb, this would be kind of a quote unquote rebuild move, because then you get rid of Dak Prescott. You can't pay Dak Prescott. If you give CeeDee all that money and maybe you find a way to get Micah Parsons back. For Micah, it might be a little bit cheaper, but that's down the road. Either way, Dak is gone out of the picture, and that's going to be hard for Cowboys fans. So
we'll see.
At
the end of the day, we're talking about
it's interesting.
We're talking about all these deals and clearly, right, talking about prorating the cap hit versus the franchise tag, yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. So there's a funny money aspect to all of these contracts, right? Where it looks like there's a big cap hit. It looks like Jordan Love's going to have this huge cap hit, $70+ million cap hit in 2028. These front offices can find ways to make all of this work. I think it's clear that the Cowboys are going to find a way to probably franchise tag Micah Parsons and make that deal cheaper for them. It looks like they're going to get the CD deal done, and I don't know what's going to come next with Dak. But if you're making the moves to potentially tag and retain Mike Parsons, if you are making the moves to get that extension done with CD, you don't do both of those things if you don't think Dak can win you a Super Bowl, which I think Dak can win you a Super Bowl, and
2 playoff wins. Just gonna throw that out there. He's only got 2 playoff wins.
And played like he should have been the MVP last season. 2
playoff wins. He lost to the Packers last year. Badly.
Okay. But you don't do all this. You don't do all this contract maneuvering with the other cornerstone pieces if you don't think you already have the quarterback in the building. Right. So I don't think it's necessary for them to rebuild. It's a question. I think it was more a question. The rebuild conversation last week was more along the lines of, do you think you can get all Do you think you can get all 3 back? If you don't, maybe it's worth trying to tear it down and build it back up, especially if you're not convinced Dak is the guy. I don't think you should be unconvinced Dak is the guy.
Oh, yeah.
But now it looks like you do think you're going to be able to get all 3 of them back together. Looks like this team should be competitive. That offense was high flying. Maybe it quickly gets figured out, like Mike McCarthy quickly gets figured out. But for now, it looks like things are moving in the right direction after we were a little doom and gloom last week on the Cowboys. And maybe we shouldn't have been.
It's the Cowboys. I'll always be doom and gloom for them, but I'm just throwing it out there. Same with the Niners, same with the Cowboys. When the Niners and the Cowboys are both bad, that's just when life is good. But either way, still.
I don't know if there's ever been a period in NFL history where both the Niners and Cowboys have been bad.
They actually both have been. I think it was when they first started out as organizations. So back in the 60s.
Yeah.
But then after that, well, maybe the 70s too. But then in the 70s, they did meet in the postseason a couple times. They met 3 straight years in the postseason, which is crazy in the 70s. And then they met 1 time in the 80s and then 4 times in the 90s.
I'm sure this is riveting audio for the listeners here.
This is just great history right here. I'm a big if you're a history buff, this is great history for you, right?
Let's name some years.
Yeah. All right. While there's also new years, there's also new rules in the NFL. The NFL has new kickoff rules coming into play. We got to see firsthand at training camp today and yesterday what the new kickoff rule is going to look like. So if you also have watched the USFL or the XFL or now the UFL or the whatever FL, they have this new kickoff rule where it's just a big wall at the 50-yard line and the ball's kicked up in the air and the runners cannot go until the returner has caught the ball. And once the returner has caught the ball
hits the ground.
Or the ball hits the ground because there's a return zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching this the other day. There is a return zone which goes from the 20 all the way into the red zone.
Correct.
If it hits that return zone, then the defenders from the kickoff team can go up and attack the ball, and that's when the return is made. So this is very interesting. So touchbacks are very interesting now because if you don't keep it, if you kick it out, great, it's a touchback. But most of the time, you kick it in, you're screwed either way.
Well, a touchback now on a kickoff, it takes you out to the 30-yard line as well. So it's another five-yard boost to try to incentivize actually landing the ball in the return zone and not kicking the ball at the back of the end zone. If you are short of the return zone, it is treated like previously kicking the ball out of bounds. So if you do not get the ball inside the 20, the offense, the receiving team, gets the ball at the 40-yard line.
Yes.
And in the XFL, when they originally adopted these kickoff rules, it was also getting the ball at the 40-yard line for a touchback. So there is a unique push-pull here with the NFL shortening that penalty for a touchback, that maybe we still see a good number of touchbacks on this play if teams really don't want to kick it back to certain returners. I also found it enlightening to see the Packers on both days of training camp while we were there. I assume that they're doing it every day at this point, running their kickoff and kick return teams. And it truly looks like they are just running it to go through the motions and make sure everyone has the muscle memory built to how this works. This is going to be a big adjustment for teams. And in the first week or two, we will quickly learn which teams actually adjusted well, which teams got their players up to speed on these rules, and which teams did not, because clearly the Packers want everyone to understand this is the rules, this is how that works. And they went out and ran on both days. You have two returners when you have the new kickoff set up here. Both days they went through over a dozen combinations of returners as well. So they're trying combinations of this, that, and everything.
They even put us out there at return too.
Yeah, like
So
it was getting close with how many different returners
Yeah.
and combinations of returners they had out there. So if you have not watched your team at training camp at all, week 1 comes around, you might see some names that you did not expect back there returning balls, because it's going to be a different thing entirely.
It's true. And while there's the kickoff rules explained, we also have to talk about the bogus onside kick rules, because it is an emphasis on bogus, because the NFL just came out with the onside kick rules, the new onside kick rules that are explained along with the kickoff. So at the beginning of the fourth quarter, if you are up, and if you can hear in my voice, if you're listening to this on the podcast on an audio form, if you are up in the fourth, you cannot onside kick it, which I think is absolutely bogus. And then also, too, the other bogus thing is you also, if you are going to do an onside kick, you have to tell the official that you're going to do an onside kick. So it takes away the surprise onside, which really sucks. And now it takes away the element of surprise. I wish the NFL could have gone like with the XFL rule or the USFL rule, where it's like where they do it where it's a 4th and 15. And if you complete the 4th and 15, you get the ball back. But then it also eliminates the kicking game completely. So
yeah, the surprise onside kick was going away. If you're adopting this kickoff rule, it is not possible to do a surprise onside kick, right? So I think this is a fine compromise, where you will have to declare that you're doing the onside kick. Takes away these, your great New Orleans Saints Super Bowl moments, your Alabama Clemson national championship game moments, but it's a necessary evil to maybe bring a little bit more action to the kickoff generally, and to reduce some of these high speed collisions of the kickoffs. I think it's a necessary sacrifice. I wouldn't hate to see the 4th and 15 thing in the NFL, but I think we will have to see a few years, probably at least 3 seasons of just this kickoff at work first before the NFL goes for, that kind of drastic change.
Yeah. And it might take a while, but hey, these rules is rules. The NFL, there's a reason why it's called the No Fun League. So, just put it out there. And then obviously, along with kickoff rules, there is also something that the NFL just announced today that they're going to be testing out for this preseason. So a little bit of backtrack. They partnered with Sony to be their new headphone sponsor.
The official technology partner of the NFL.
The official technology partner of the NFL. Sony. It's not Microsoft. I wonder why. It's probably because Microsoft had an entire crash of their system. But so now Sony is part of is now the proud technology sponsor of the NFL. They're using their chain gang technology, or in this case, the Hawkeye technology, to test out the measurements of how the chain gang is run, and they're going to use it for this preseason. But they may do this in the regular season, maybe next year. It's just a test. This is something that the NFL has done in previous years before, where they test these things out in the preseason. And if they get popular responses from the NFL teams, the coaches, and the players, it goes on to the board, or goes on to the general managers and the owners, and they'll have this meeting to try and maybe approve this rule, and then it gets approved for the regular season. So this is a new one, because the chain gang, or the people who move the sticks, it's usually been human beings. Well, now they're going to go to potentially using technology for this situation, and to make it really specific for the National Football League. And Kedrick, I don't know much about it, but you may have a little bit more sense of what it is. Possibly.
Yeah. So
explain it to me.
So when you have a close call on either you have converted for a first down or not, right? And it is not entirely clear based on the spot of the ball compared to the chains on the sidelines, now in the NFL, as it is today, you see the folks carrying the chains, the 10-yard chains, leave the sideline and go out to the field to measure where the actual first down marker is supposed to be. So it requires carrying the chains out, walking them out there, doing the full measurement, seeing where the ball is spotted.
A lot of tedious work.
Bringing the chains back to the sidelines and yada, yada, yada. Now, with these like action cameras and the Hawkeye cameras with Sony, this will be done in a matter of 40 seconds. You will make these first down determinations almost instantaneously compared to how it was done prior. And just cameras above in the stadium will measure based on where the first down spot was, where the ball should be to convert the next first down. So that will all be done from overhead. Referee will get the notification in their ear, and off you go. It's a quality of life adjustment, I think, generally, especially for fans at games who are sitting there and waiting for the chain gang to come out and doing the whole thing. Now it'll just be done very quickly. If you're actually at a game, you might not even realize that they went to the Hawkeye technology, right? They might tell you on TV, maybe, but you might not even recognize it anymore. This has nothing to do with how the ball is spotted. It's not like working with the chip in the ball to determine where the ball should be spotted. So it's a little bit of like a little nothing there in terms of how it is impacting the game. You still have the very inexact science of how you're actually spotting the ball, and that is what determines where the first down marker is. But it's a nice quality of life adjustment to not have to sit there and wait for the chain gang to come out onto the field, go back to the sidelines. Should be, I don't know how many times we're going to measure with the chains in the preseason.
Probably not much.
So I don't know exactly what it's there for. I don't know if anybody's going to get real upset about a first down conversion call or not with the chains. So I don't know how much we're going to actually see this in action. But it would be, if it works well, I think it's a good addition to the league.
Yeah. And it's a perfect time to use it in the games that don't matter too, which is the NFL preseason. I mean,
exactly.
There's nothing wrong about that, but either way, still a lot. So we're actually going to end it a bit early because we got through all the stuff that we got through. Bears, we talked earlier about Bears and Texans. We talked about Packers camp. I got to say that it was nice being up here in Appleton, Kedrick.
It's been a fun couple of days.
It's been fun a couple of days. It was very fun last night at the Timber Rattlers game, and I had to bring this up because Kedrick let all of America down yesterday night. So we were at the Timber Rattlers game, which, by the way, the Timber Rattlers, if you've ever been to a Timber Rattlers game or any baseball game in your life, please go. It's a fun experience, And yes, I'm endorsing baseball on a football podcast.
No, you can't like other sports.
No, I can't. I guess I can. But anyways, so yeah, we went to Timber Rattlers game. He decided, because it was $2 beers, $2 hot dogs, that he was going to try the 999, which is 9 beers, 9 hot dogs in 9 innings. And he fell half a hot dog short of glory. And oh boy, did we rip him in the car yesterday. I was very disappointed. We were all disappointed in you, but you tried your best. You tried your best.
Yeah, it was a true failure of might.
The state of Minnesota, let me put it this way. The state of Minnesota would have applauded you.
Despite the fact that everyone else in the car had, no more than half the number of hot dogs or beers that I had.
I had 5 in the first inning.
Somehow I was still the one to be ripped at the end here. I could not listen after 9 beers and 8.5 hot dogs. Getting that last half hot dog down is truly difficult. I got time extended to me too. This wasn't a matter of I couldn't do it. The would-be 27th out of the game ended up not because of a dropped third strike, and then the batter advanced to first base successfully. So it was not for not having enough time. It was I could not eat a hot dog. I woke up this morning still smelling like hot dogs, sweating out. I think if you've ever been around someone who like boils their hot dogs and stuff to like cook them. I think that's what I was sweating out this morning.
You're sweating out because they were, I think,
hot
all
dog
boiled
water. So that you keep reusing it so that it tastes more like hot dogs as you continue.
And boiled hot dogs are like nasty. I was expecting them to be gross. He also does this technique with the hot dogs where he just like squeezes the life out of it and then just puts it in his mouth.
Compress the bread to make it easier to get down.
Squeeze the ever-loving soul out of those hot dogs. They were already squeezed enough.
Listen, when you are trying to eat 9 hot dogs, you are trying to maximize.
You didn't maximize any of it.
You're trying to maximize your opportunity and trying to minimize the volume of food you're trying to get down.
You didn't even maximize it. You felt you.
8.5 hot dogs and 9 beers. That is fully maximized. I learned that last night. I do not think I could have drank another beer or had another hot dog. I was done.
It was very funny though. Me and your brother were just having a blast watching you just go through that. I enjoyed that. But with that does it for us here on Snap the Pigskin today. If you want to find us, we are now on YouTube. I just want to give it to everybody. We are now on YouTube. Snap the Pigskin is now on YouTube. We're no longer, an audio show. We still are, but we're also on YouTube now. So if you want to see me and Kedrick's pretty faces, please go and give a like and a subscribe to the YouTube channel. It'd be very awesome if you did. And we'll be dropping more episodes every single week, every single week when we get the chance, probably every Wednesday, middle of the week, try to catch you up on your NFL action. And also, too, if you don't like watching us on YouTube, that's okay. You can find us on other stuff, too. You can find us also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. We used to be on Google Podcasts, but Google Podcasts
doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. It's no more. So feel free to give us a listen to STP on those listening platforms and also on YouTube. So with that, I am Noah Clark alongside Kedrick Stumbris. This has been another edition of Snap the Pigskin.